He looked the investors dead in the eye and said, "She's too emotional to handle real money." That was the moment I knew I'd eventually destroy him. My name is Lena Park, co-founder of Echelon Mobility, the startup I built with my former best friend and current walking red flag, Evan Blake. We met in grad school, bonded over ramen, caffeine, and the shared belief that we'd build something world-changing. And for a while, we actually did. Evan handled sales. I handled operations. We were a perfect balance, at least, that's what I believed before everything unraveled. The pitch meeting that morning was supposed to be simple. We'd been invited to present our newest line of adaptive smart scooters to a group of angel investors. I'd rehearsed the numbers, refined the deck, and polished our trajectory into something sleek, irresistible, undeniable. But the moment I stepped onto the stage, Evan spoke over me. "Actually," he said smoothly, placing a patronizing hand on my shoulder, "I'll take this part. Lena tends to get a little emotional when the stakes are high." The investors chuckled politely. My stomach twisted. This wasn't the first time he'd undermined me, but this was the boldest. Until then, he'd kept his digs subtle, little comments about my tone, how I overthought problems, how my stress energy could kill a room. Always said with a laugh, always brushed off as a joke. But now, in front of people deciding the future of our company, he might as well have slapped me. I tried to keep my expression neutral, though my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. While he talked, I watched him, watched the swagger, the casual lies, the way he exaggerated his role and minimized mine. He even took credit for the warehouse restructuring I did solo after he bailed for a mental reset weekend in Cancun. As he clicked through my slides, he didn't miss a single chance to paint me as the messy, dramatic partner he bravely tolerated. A few investors exchanged glances. One whispered something behind his hand. And by the time Evan wrapped up, smiling smugly, something inside me had gone cold. After the meeting, he clapped me on the back. "Don't take it personally, Lena. Investors like stability. You feel things too strongly." I stared at him. "And you think that gives you the right to lie?" He shrugged. "Relax. It worked. They liked us." But he didn't look at me when he said us. Later that afternoon, while finishing paperwork in our office, a converted loft overlooking the river, I caught something strange. A notification popped up on our shared financial dashboard. A flagged transaction. Then another. Then several more. All under Evan's credentials. Spa retreats. Designer clothes. Random hotel bookings. Thousands. Tens of thousands. My pulse slowed. My suspicion sharpened. Maybe I wasn't the emotional one after all. And I had no idea yet just how deep his spending went. But I would soon. "You said." I told myself the flag transactions had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe a vendor name looked odd, or the accounting software glitched again like it did last quarter. Evan couldn't be that careless, right? But the more I scrolled, the less my excuses held up. There were charges labeled client hospitality, except the dates lined up with the same weekend he went to a luxury spa in Palm Springs. Another one was filed under equipment testing, yet the receipt showed a boutique clothing store known for $900 hoodies. And then there was a $4,300 business dinner at a restaurant we both knew required reservations months in advance. I'd certainly never been invited. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We'd been partners for 5 years, built a company from my cramped kitchen table, and sacrificed too many nights to survive the chaos of startup life. Evan wasn't perfect, impulsive, self-serving at times, but he wasn't a thief, was he? I decided to confront him gently, just to clear the air. But the moment I entered our shared office, he was already on the phone. His voice was low, urgent, nothing like his usual charismatic pitch talk. "No, they won't find out," he whispered. "Just handle your part." When he saw me, he stiffened. His expression softened a beat too late. "Hey, didn't hear you come in." "Who was that?" I asked. "Just a supplier," he replied quickly, too quickly. "They messed up an order, you know how it is." But I did know, vendors didn't speak in hushed tones about things people won't find out. Red flag number 1. Later that week, during a staff check-in, he started doing this thing he'd never done before, praising everyone but me. He complimented the interns' sharp thinking, applauded our product designer for innovation, and even called our junior analyst the backbone of operations. When I presented my segment updates, he didn't look up from his phone. Red flag number 2. The emotional strain hit harder than I expected. I'd always prided myself on being tough, on pushing through chaos without letting it break me. But suddenly, every meeting, every shared task, every conversation felt like walking barefoot over glass. I was second-guessing everything: his tone, his spending, even my own instincts. One night, while reorganizing our supply chain documents, because Evan insisted my emotional clutterbrain made everything disorganized, I found something else. A vendor contract he'd signed without looping me in. It included a massive upfront fee and terms that made no sense. And the kicker: the vendor's address traced back to a P.O. box in Nevada. Red flag number 3. And a flashing neon red at that. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past month. The dismissive comments. The secretive calls. The unexplained spending. His sudden eagerness to make me look incompetent. Maybe he wasn't just careless. Maybe he was hiding something. And deep down, I felt a quiet dread. Whatever he was doing, it was about to get worse. The betrayal didn't hit me all at once. It came piece by piece, like a puzzle I never wanted to solve, but couldn't stop assembling. After days of uneasy silence and Evan's increasingly erratic behavior, I finally pulled the full financial logs from our accounting platform. I had administrator access, something he tended to forget whenever he got sloppy. What I found wasn't just suspicious. It was devastating. A separate ledger, hidden, mislabeled, and accessible only because he forgot to lock one subfolder, showed months of unauthorized transactions. Not a few hundred here or a splurge there. Hundreds of thousands siphoned out of our operating funds. Spa retreats disguised as client research. Designer watches labeled prototype components. Weekend getaways booked under market analysis. And the worst one. A $28,700 charge marked emotional mitigation retreat. He'd literally used the company's money and blamed my supposed emotional instability to justify it. But that wasn't the real betrayal. Buried deeper in the logs was a line item that made my blood run cold. Investor relations package, sent by Evan Blake. It included a portfolio, one he created without my knowledge, presenting Echelon Mobility as his personal venture, positioning me as an assistant-level operations support, and pitching a 50/50 equity buyout, with the 50% he planned to sell being my half, sold behind my back. He was trying to cut me out. Erase me. Replace me. The man who told investors I was too emotional had been emotionally bleeding our company dry while setting me up to lose everything I built. I shoved back from my desk, breath shaking so hard I thought I might choke. My fingers were numb. My vision blurred. Rage hit first, hot, sharp, overwhelming. Then heartbreak, quiet and heavy. And beneath it all, disbelief so deep it felt like falling through a trapdoor. How long had he been planning this? Was every condescending remark, every joke, every backhanded compliment part of the setup? Had he really turned on me just because he wanted money, power, credit? I felt betrayed on every level, as a co-founder, as a friend, as the person who held this company together while he took mental reset weekends. For a long moment, I sat in our empty office, the city lights flickering over the river, trying to breathe through the storm in my chest. My hands trembled over the keyboard. I could confront him, expose him, walk away. But none of those options felt like enough. Because Evan had underestimated me, badly. He thought calling me emotional made me weak. He thought the investors would side with him. He thought he could bury me with lies while he drowned himself in luxury. A slow, steady calm settled over me. If he wanted to weaponize my emotions, I would weaponize his spending. And next time we stood in front of the investors, I wouldn't be the one left looking foolish. For 2 days after discovering the truth, I moved through the office like a ghost, silent, focused, but burning from the inside out. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It wasn't even rage. It was something colder, sharper, more precise. determination. But that transformation didn't happen instantly. It began with a single, humiliating moment. On Wednesday morning, Evan strolled into the office wearing a limited edition watch I recognized from the transactions, one with a price tag that made me physically ill. He dropped his bag on his desk, leaned back, and gave me the same smug grin he reserved for boardrooms and people he thought were beneath him. "You look tired, Lena," he said. "You sure you're up for the client demo? I can handle it if you're feeling overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. There it was again. The coded insult. The dismissal. The weaponization of my humanity. Something inside me cracked. I wasn't tired. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was done. He turned his back to make himself a coffee, and that's when I saw it, his laptop, open, a draft email glowing on the screen. Subject line, finalizing equity transfer. Please confirm ASAP. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not once. He was selling my half. Without hesitation. Without shame. And the email was addressed to the same investors we'd pitched to last week. My chest tightened, but not with panic this time. Clarity. He wasn't planning to betray me. He already had. Everything I feared. He'd been doing behind locked doors and fake smiles for months. I steadied myself against the table, staring at his laptop until the words blurred. For a second, I felt the old version of me, trusting, hopeful, forgiving, rise up like she wanted to defend him. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe he panicked. Maybe. No. There was no maybe. Every red flag. Every lie. Every patronizing comment. It all fit together too perfectly. He wasn't sabotaging me out of insecurity. He was doing it strategically. To push me out. To claim the company as his. To rewrite our history so he looked like the genius, and I the emotional dead weight he carried. My breath steadied. My heartbeat stopped spiraling. An unexpected calm wrapped around me, anchoring me to the floor. I didn't need to confront him. Not yet. Not while he still believed I was the fragile half of this partnership. I needed a plan. Something airtight. Something undeniable. Something that used the very narrative he built against me. And then, as Evan walked past me again, arrogant, careless, drunk on his own imagined victory, another realization hit me so cleanly it almost made me smile. He'd underestimated me so completely. He'd left a perfect trail. Every receipt. Every fraudulent expense. Every lie he'd coded into the ledger. All of it was proof, and he'd handed it to me like a gift. That was the moment I decided. If he wanted to call me emotional, fine. I'd show the investors just how emotional he really was, with his spending, his deception, and his greed splashed across the screen for everyone to see. He wanted war. Now he had won. I didn't build a case overnight. Revenge, I learned, is less about theatrics and more about paperwork. Relentless, boring, irrefutable paperwork. The plan I sketched that night was surgical. I copied every line from the hidden ledger onto a private drive and printed hard copies. I exported emails, vendor receipts, credit card reconciliations, the draft email about the equity transfer, and even the GPS-linked invoices that placed Evan at luxury resorts on company time. I photographed timestamps on Slack messages and cross-referenced them with calendar entries. If he'd left a trail, I would make a map of it. A company is more than numbers. It's people. I quietly reached out to the junior analyst, the one Evan had loudly praised in meetings. She'd been overlooked, but she remembered an offhand conversation with Evan about moving funds temporarily. I coaxed admissions from a couple of contractors who'd been paid odd sums and asked them to put their accounts of the transactions in writing. I treated them gently. This wasn't about loyalty, it was about truth. Legal would tear anything apart that looked tampered with. I timestamped copies, used third-party cloud backups, and emailed sealed PDFs to a backup account I only accessed from home. I documented where I found each file and who last touched it. If Evan tried to play the fabricated evidence card, I wanted the story to die before it started. Evan loved the spotlight. He thrived when investors were watching him swoop and charm. So I created a meeting he couldn't resist, a final pitch with the very angels he'd been courting privately. I arranged the room, prepared a slide deck that looked like a routine update, and made sure the investors arrived early. I left a small breadcrumb on his laptop, a draft email asking him to confirm final sell-off details, bait he'd gobble up. Numbers matter, but so does storytelling. I rewrote portions of our public pitch to emphasize governance, transparency, and fiduciary duty. I inserted a single innocuous-looking slide into our deck, one that, when clicked during the demo, would open a folder of the flagged transactions. I planned to let the data speak while I stood silent and steady. All the while, Evan thought he still held the high ground. He walked into work that week with a new swagger, his watch gleaming, his emails cheerful. He'd send me smug texts about closing the deal and wink emojis that felt like smears. Inside, my stomach churned with a mix of panic and focus. The closer we got to the scheduled meeting, the more I felt like a tight wire walker with no net. One misstep and he could bury me with one more lie, or worse, accuse me of sabotage. On the morning of the demo, I rehearsed my face in the mirror until it felt like armor, calm, unshakable, unreadable. My hard copies were in my bag. The backup files were encrypted. The investors were on their way. Evan waved a hand at me in the hallway, all charm and certainty. "Relax," he said. "We've got this." He smiled like a man who already owned the ending. He had no idea I still had one move left. The conference room shimmered with polished chrome and daylight, the kind of place where reputations were made or destroyed. The investors filed in, briefcases snapping open, crisp suits whispering as they took their seats. Evan entered last, of course, like a celebrity arriving at his own premiere. He flashed them the signature Evan Blake megawatt smile. "Gentlemen, ladies, ready to see what I've been building?" Not we. Never we. I positioned myself by the projector, hands steady despite the adrenaline humming through my veins. Everything was in place. All I had to do was wait. Evan launched into his pitch, speaking in grand, sweeping gestures, drip-feeding charm like a pro. I watched the investors nod along. For a moment, it was almost easy to forget what he'd done. But then he clicked to the slide I'd been waiting for. The innocuous slide. The trap. "Now, if you look at our..." His voice stopped. On the screen behind him, the folder titled Evan's Emotional Expenses, "Do Not Open" flashed open automatically. There was a beat of silence. Pure, razor-edged silence. Then the receipts appeared. One by one. Line by line. Every fraudulent transaction. Every luxury purchase. Every sham business retreat. Every dime he'd siphoned out of the company while calling me emotional. At first, Evan laughed. A brittle, confused laugh. Looks like someone opened the wrong file. But the investors were already leaning forward. "Mr. Blake," one said slowly, "these charges, are they accurate?" Evan's face drained of color. "No, this is taken out of context. Lena must have." I stepped forward, calm as a surgeon. All receipts were pulled directly from our financial logs. Time-stamped. Verified. Untouched. The investors turned to me. "Ms. Park, were you aware of this misuse of funds?" I nodded. "Only recently. I suspected an internal issue, so I gathered evidence. Everything you see here is documented and backed by third-party confirmations." Evan sputtered. "She's lying. She's been unstable for months. This is her emotional spiral." "Actually," another investor interrupted, "these records match emails you personally sent. And this one," he held up the printed copy of the equity transfer draft I'd included in their pre-meeting packets, "shows you attempted to sell Ms. Park's 50% stake without her consent." Evan froze. He hadn't seen the packets on the table. He hadn't realized the investors had already read everything. The room turned cold. "Mr. Blake," the lead investor said, "this is grounds for immediate removal from company operations." And given the scale of the financial misconduct, he exchanged firm, grave looks with the others. "We'll be recommending legal action." Evan turned to me, his voice cracking. "Lena, you can't do this. You wouldn't. We built this together. Come on." I met his eyes. For once, he looked small. "You wanted to show them how emotional I was," I said quietly. "So I showed them yours." Security entered. Evan backed away, eyes wide, denial spilling out of him like a leak he couldn't stop. You set me up. You think they'll believe you over? I'm the visionary. He was escorted out mid-sentence. The door slammed shut. Silence. Then, an investor exhaled. Ms. Park, congratulations. You've just saved your company. And for the first time in months, I felt something strong and steady bloom in my chest. Victory. Evan's fall didn't happen in a dramatic explosion. It happened the way real consequences usually do, slow at first, then all at once. The investors wasted no time. By the end of the week, Evan was officially removed from Echelon Mobility. His access badges were disabled, his company credit line frozen, and a full audit launched. Once the auditors dug in, the truth snowballed fast. Months of misappropriated funds, falsified reports, and personal spending disguised as business transactions. Spa retreats, watches, designer clothes, luxury hotels, all under the banner of emotional mitigation. He'd weaponized the word to belittle me, and buried himself with it. The board filed civil charges. Our legal team pursued restitution. One of the investors even mentioned the possibility of criminal fraud. Evan's lawyers tried to spin the usual story, that I was vindictive, unstable, vengeful. They didn't get far. Because everything he said I was, impulsive, reactive, emotional, fell apart when weighed against the meticulous proof I'd gathered. Email trails, time logs, contract discrepancies. It wasn't rage that took him down. It was documentation. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. As the news spread, people who once brushed me aside began treating me with a new kind of respect, the kind built on clarity, resilience, and truth. Our staff members, who had quietly watched Evan's favoritism and impulsive decisions spiral, stepped forward with support. The junior analyst I'd confided in approached me one morning with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for standing up when none of us could." With Evan gone, the company felt lighter. Meetings ran smoother. Projects accelerated. Investors trusted me, not out of pity, but because I'd proven something undeniable. I wasn't too emotional for leadership. I was steady enough to hold the line while someone else lost control. The morning our largest investor group signed the renewal agreement, now naming me sole managing founder, I walked out onto the balcony of our office, letting the river breeze wash over me. For the first time since the nightmare began, my chest felt open, strong, free. Evan, on the other hand, disappeared from the tech scene almost instantly. No more flashy pitches. No more luxury business retreats. His reputation, once shiny and inflated, collapsed under the truth of his own spending habits. Last I heard, he was negotiating settlements and trying to rebuild a career from the ashes he lit himself. And honestly, I didn't need revenge anymore. He'd delivered it to himself. In the end, he called me emotional. But it was his emotions that cost him everything. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone undermine you, lie to you, or call you too much while they hid their own mess, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you love twists, justice, and revenge stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. There's plenty more coming.